show in history, other than The Apprentice, Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV.
Hey, welcome back. We're kicking off a fantastic Thirsty Thursday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm trying every way I can to add levity to the situation, to talk around it, to find other angles on it. But every so often, you know, we got to act like an actual news show, and we got to cover this impeachment crap, Frankie. So, do you want to go back to Washington?
Why not?
Meeting will come to order. Chair now recognizes the ranking member or their counsel for the first round of their 45-minute questions. Thank the gentleman. I want to get a few basic facts on the table of individuals that were involved in the 2016 election, just to see who you know and who you've met with. So I'll start with you, Mr. Holmes. Have you met with or do you know Alexandra Chalupa? Holmes, could you put your microphone on?
No.
Do you know Nellie Orr? Have you met with Nellie Orr? Bruce Orr?
No.
Glenn Simpson?
No.
Thank you. Same question for you, Dr. Hill. Do you know or have you met with Alexandra Chalupa?
No.
Nellie Orr?
No.
Bruce Orr?
Only in the course of my previous position as the National Intelligence Officer for Russia, where he attended some of the meetings that I presided over.
Years ago?
That's a long time ago, correct?
Glenn Simpson?
No.
Dr. Hill, in your testimony, you said that, in your deposition, that Christopher Steele was your counterpart at one time. Is this correct?
That's correct, yes.
You testified that you met with Christopher Steele in 2016. I assume that's still correct?
That's correct, yes.
And the only thing we didn't get on that is, do you know about when that was in 2016 and how many times?
I'm afraid I don't. I actually had met with him, well, you asked me actually in the deposition when the most recent time that I had met with him, in 2016. And he retired from the British Intelligence Services in 2009, which is the same time.
I'm asking about 2016.
2016, I don't recall, but I did meet with him sometimes before 2016.
But you don't remember the date?
I don't, I'm afraid, no.
Okay. You stated in your deposition that a colleague had showed you the Steele dossier before it was published. Who was that colleague?
That was one of my colleagues at the Brookings Institution.
And who was that?
That was the Brookings Institution President Strobe Talbot, who had been sent a copy of this.
And he shared it with you?
That was the day before it was published in BuzzFeed.
Thank you. You mentioned in your deposition also that you thought that it was let's get the exact quote, that the dossier was a rabbit hole.
Hey, welcome back. All right, enough of that crap. It's all kabuki theater. Bottom line is this, folks. We have our very own presidential historian right here on Liquid Lunch. His name is David Eisenbach. He's a professor at Columbia University, a very esteemed university. And he tells me time and time again on this show that never in history has a president been actually removed from office.
Well, you don't have to be a historian to know that.
Okay, well, I'm trying to give a good corroborating witness here, okay? And you don't have to ruin my segue, because I'm saying when it comes to breaking down the Democratic field, we go to another professor at Pace University, former retired NYPD lieutenant, Army officer, Darrin Porcher joins us. Doctor,
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
very
me
much.
here, John.
I'm sorry Frank had to ruin your intro like that on
Sorry.
you, but I was trying to go segue from like
He
Professor.
hates me, and that's why he did it. So but now we're going to get this thing up and running.
Did he play in the XFL? Wasn't there a player named He Hate Me in the...
There actually was. It's crazy as it may sound. Okay.
So, Darrin, I usually have the NYPD hat right here on set. Not a lot of these left-wing shows even can bear to look at an NYPD hat, but my dad was a cop. You're a cop, so
And I
I have a
salute your
lot
father.
of respect for you guys. But you're here, you were on the streets with the people, now you're on the campuses with the kids. You were around for the whole Bloomberg era. And, I'm thinking this little diminutive dynamo is really showing how unprincipled he is by flip-flopping on his stop.
Well, so Sunday, let's play the video if people haven't seen it.
All right.
He was at a black church, I believe it was A.R. Bernard's church in Brooklyn, and this policy that he not only presided over and championed for 12 years as mayor, which is the use of stop, question, and frisk by police officers, but he's then continued to defend it for the ensuing 6 years. Now that he's running for president as a Democrat, where that's not so popular, he is radically changing his tune. This is what Mike Bloomberg said on Sunday.
Erosion of that trust bothered me deeply, and it still bothers me, and I want to earn it back. I now see that we could and should have acted sooner and acted faster to cut the stops. I wish we had. I'm sorry that we didn't. But I can't change history. However, today, I want you to know that I realized back then I was wrong, and I'm sorry.
What do you say, boss?
Well, we have to take in perspective of who Mike Bloomberg is. This is someone that started off as a Democrat. He ran for mayor in New York City as a Republican. In his tenure as the mayor, within his mayoralship in New York City, he then switched over to become an independent. And then, as we move forward, now he's becoming a Democrat all over again. This guy folds like a chair. And so we take in consideration, what do we look for in connection with leadership qualities? We need someone that has a backbone. Now, he went to the Christian Cultural Center Church, which has the I want to say they have the largest population of church parishioners in the city. And that's why he primarily went there and introduced this narrative of his fear of stop, question, and frisk moving forward, and how he was opposed to it at this present time. The truth of the matter is, this is not someone that stands for a particular cause. This is someone that flips like a windmill. And so moving forward, I can't imagine how someone would vote someone of this magnitude. And Mike Bloomberg was never someone, and I mean never, one that I supported. And this just this resonates or crystallizes what Mike Bloomberg is. Therefore, the rest of the nation can see this, and you decide as a votership moving forward for next year.
Darrin, let me ask you, let me tap into your law enforcement expertise about stop, question, and frisk as a tool. Based on your experience in the police department and as a student of criminology and as a teacher of criminology, do you think that stop, question, and frisk has been effective in reducing crime here in New York City? And now that de Blasio has cut the number of stop and frisks, in part due to a court order, we still have seen crime stay pretty low. Does that maybe say, all right, maybe stop, question, and frisk is not solely responsible for the drop in crime?
Well, there was clearly no correlation between the number of stops as it relates to the precipitous drops in crimes. And I give you an example. Back during the Bloomberg era, we averaged roughly 600 to 700,000 stops a year. However, 90% of all of those stops equated to no arrests. So therefore, we're looking at 90%, less than 8% of the stops resulted in an arrest. So there was a correlation in connection with targeted policing. When I say targeted policing, this is more enforcement driven to the areas where we had an issue. That's how we were able to experience the decreases in crime. Now, as it relates to what Bloomberg's statement was in terms of driving stop, question, and frisk, police commanders across all of the 5 boroughs were vehemently opposed to continuously stop, questioning, and frisking individuals, because what it did is it now fractured the policing community ties. We had other plausible alternatives, such as technological innovations that could be applied by law enforcement, because the average person in a place like New York City is photographed or videotaped 100 to 200 times a day. What law enforcement is now able to do is encapsulate that information and drive it accordingly. How many times you turn your television on and you see, if you see a statement, if you see this individual that committed this crime, please dial 1-800-TIPS, etc. That's what caused the drop in crime. So when Bloomberg, I want to say, approached this from a perspective of, look, we just want to stop and frisk as many people as we could. It was an error on his part, and he never did a true assessment as a chief official, meaning the mayor of New York City, to assess if this was something that worked and it or not worked. So this is basically where we are. It created a state of acrimony between the communities of color and even the Caucasian communities in the city of New York. And we also had something we refer to as Floyd versus the city of New York. It was a landmark court case where we had petitioners that stated that we had an inordinately high number of African Americans and Latinos that were stopped and frisked by the NYPD. I understood what the ruling was, but I genuinely believe that the average person was stopped and frisked in accordance with where the calls came from. The high crime neighborhoods had I want to say citizens that were more susceptible to call.
They were doing this targeted policing, but I just want to go back. I want to give you my thesis, Professor. Frank's talking about how crime hasn't really gone up, but that other 10% you're talking about, all that stuff stopped being reported because they didn't stop, question, and frisk. So the 90%, we get it, they weren't doing anything. The other 10%, they were going in for something. So we're not seeing those stats anymore. And then also de Blasio's wiped a whole bunch of crimes off the table these days that they don't even call crimes anymore. So they're playing with the numbers, if you ask me, on that stuff.
There's been a quantitative manipulation of the crime stats for a period of time, and that's run consistent within the de Blasio administration. De Blasio is the worst crime fighter that I've ever seen as a mayor. But moving forward, hopefully, us as a nation will identify that this is not the guy we want in the White House.
And by the way, speaking of that, just as we've been sitting here within the last few minutes, Mike Bloomberg has officially filed with the Federal Elections Commission to be a candidate for president.
So, now, just before, I don't know, I know you teach criminal justice, but does Bloomberg have to reach the clown's hand to qualify to run for president?
Leave us short guys alone.
Like the roller coaster, you got to like reach there to go on the adult rides.
He's using his pocket.
He is.
He's using his wallet, and that's what he's driving. His wallet, not his mind.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You got to come back.
Thanks for having me.
You got to be one of our criminal justice experts. And let me tell you something. There are not many people that come on the show and try to give me a run for my money the way they dress. But this guy is one of the dapperest Dans we've ever had on. He's got the purple on the purple.
Look at this collar.
With the purple socks. Look at this collar. He's got the fly green socks and everything, this guy. Well, thank you very much, Darrin.
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate it. Appreciate you very much. Stay right there. Make another drink. We'll take a quick break and come back right after this.